I barely survived 50 hours in an abandoned mental hospital. It was supposed to be a joke, a dare, the kind of thing you do when you're too young to realize the consequences, too cocky to consider the risks. I should have never taken that challenge. It didn't even seem real. An abandoned psychiatric hospital on the outskirts of town, rumored to be haunted, cursed, or something far worse. We'd heard the stories, of course. The place had been shut down decades ago after a series of mysterious deaths and rumors of unethical experiments. But it wasn't until I walked through the decaying gates and felt that first cold shiver run down my spine that I realized just how wrong I was. The rusted gates creaked behind me as they closed. No turning back. The air was thick, stale, like the world itself had abandoned this place long ago. My footsteps echoed off the cracked tiles as I wandered the hallways of the forsaken St. Augustine's Psychiatric Hospital. The hospital was a maze. Empty rooms with peeling wallpaper, long corridors that stretched into infinity, and windows that had long lost their glass. At first, it was eerily quiet. Too quiet. The silence pressed in on me, almost as if the building was waiting. But I had no time to be afraid. I had a dare to complete. I was here to prove I wasn't some scared child. Hours passed before I realized I was no longer alone. At first, it was just a flicker, a shadow in the corner of my eye that I couldn't explain. A fleeting movement. Nothing to worry about. But then, the whispers began. Soft at first. Too soft to make out the words, but loud enough to make the hairs on my neck stand on end. They came from behind me, from the walls, from nowhere. I spun around, searching the empty hallway for any sign of life, but I was still alone. I pressed forward. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew it was something else. Something that had been here far longer than I could understand. I tried to push it from my mind, telling myself it was all part of the dare. I was here for a reason, and I was going to finish what I'd started. But as I walked further into the depths of the hospital, the whispers grew louder. The walls themselves seemed to hum with the voices of those long gone. I came across my first locked door. It was strange, really. The rest of the hospital was wide open, every room abandoned and forgotten. But this one was shut tight. There was something about it that made me stop, something unsettling. I shouldn't have touched it. But curiosity got the better of me. The moment I touched the handle, the temperature in the hallway dropped. My breath fogged in front of me. The whispering intensified, now clearer, more urgent. I yanked the door open, and the sound of the hinges screeched in protest, loud and jarring. Inside, I found something I wasn't prepared for. There were bloodstains, dark and crusted, splattered across the floor. Restraint straps were still fastened to the walls. The room was a madhouse of broken furniture, shattered glass, and tattered patient files scattered across the floor. But it was the messages that caught my eye. Scrawled in what looked like dried blood, the walls were covered in a single phrase, repeated over and over. They never leave. We never leave. The whispering escalated into a cacophony of voices. Something moved in the corner of the room, something I couldn't see, but I could feel it watching me. I slammed the door shut, my heart hammering in my chest. I tried to find my way out, but the hospital was like a labyrinth. The walls seemed to shift, the hallways winding and turning back on themselves. I couldn't even tell how long I'd been inside. Hours? Days? It felt like I was walking in circles, but I couldn't escape. Every time I thought I had found an exit, I found myself standing before a different door, the same faded sign above it. Room 103. The whispers had become voices now, angry voices, and they weren't just around me. They were in my head. You're going to die here. It was a simple message, but it pierced through my mind like a knife. I began to panic. I ran, my footsteps heavy on the cracked tiles, my breath shallow. I wasn't alone. I could hear them, the sounds of movement behind me. Footsteps, scratching, something crawling just out of sight. I turned corners too fast, my mind spinning, but it always felt like whatever it was always there. I wasn't alone. I don't know how long I wandered, but eventually I found something even more disturbing than the walls of the hospital themselves. A hallway of mirrors. Each mirror reflected my image, but with slight distortions. My face was blurry in some, my eyes blackened in others. In one of the mirrors, I could have sworn I saw someone standing behind me. But when I turned around, nothing. The mirrors began to crack, one by one, spiderwebs of glass forming as if they were alive, taunting me with their reflections. And then the whispers turned into laughter. "We can see you." I reached out, my hand trembling, but I couldn't touch the glass. It felt like there was something behind it, a force, something trying to get in. I had been running for hours, my breath ragged and desperate, when I found myself in the same hallway again. the same mirror, the same laugh. And then I saw it. A figure standing in the reflection, a woman or something resembling one. Her face was distorted, her features twisted into an unnatural grin. She wasn't in the hallway with me. She was in the mirror. The whispers stopped. The air grew thick, suffocating. I could hear the softest tap, tap, tap behind me. But when I turned, no one was there. It was her, the woman in the mirror, and she was beckoning me. "Come closer," she whispered, but her lips didn't move. The sound came from everywhere. I finally found an exit. A back door, cracked open just enough for me to squeeze through. My heart thundered as I stepped into the cold, fresh air of the night. I was free, but as I looked back at the hospital, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The windows, every single one, was glowing. Inside, the silhouettes of people, patients, pressed their faces against the glass. Their eyes were wide, hollow, and they all wore the same twisted grin. I stumbled backward, my legs giving way beneath me, but the sound of the doors slamming shut echoed across the empty parking lot. I was free, for now. I didn't sleep for days after I left the hospital. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear those whispers, the way they echoed in the dark corners of my mind, telling me things I didn't want to hear, things I couldn't understand. My nights were filled with an oppressive silence, but when I woke up, there was something different in the air, something heavier. My house, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a prison. I had trouble even going to the bathroom without feeling like someone was watching me. And then, there was the scratching. It started as a faint noise, like nails running across wood. Just barely audible, but it was there, every night. At first, I chalked it up to the wind, to some old house settling. But as time passed, the scratching grew louder, more persistent. It came from beneath the floorboards. I couldn't take it anymore. My own house, my supposed sanctuary, was turning on me. I grabbed a crowbar, determined to find the source. When I pried the floorboards open, a cloud of dust billowed up, filling the air with a choking stench. The scratching stopped, but there was something worse now. A whisper. It was faint at first, like a soft wind brushing against my ear. But then I heard it more clearly, as though it was coming from the hole beneath the floor. It was a voice I had heard before, the woman from the mirror. "Come back," she said. "We're waiting for you." I slammed the floorboards back down, my heart racing in my chest. I thought if I just ignored it, maybe it would go away. But that's when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of something scratching at the door from the other side. The whispers didn't stop. They followed me, everywhere. I could hear them now, not just in the house, but outside too, on the streets, in the grocery store. Every time I turned a corner, I felt their presence. I started seeing things too, faces in the crowd that shouldn't have been there. People staring at me with those same empty, hollow eyes I saw in the windows of the hospital. At night, I began seeing shadows lurking at the edge of my vision, moving just a little too quickly to be natural. One evening, I was sitting in my living room when the lights flickered. I had no idea how much time had passed, but when the lights came back on, everything was different. The room felt smaller, the walls felt closer, and there, standing in the corner of the room, was the woman from the mirror. "We've been waiting for you," she whispered. Her voice was low, almost a growl, like the sound of 100 other voices wrapped into one. My breath caught in my throat. My body refused to move. It was her, the same twisted figure, her face distorted with that sickening grin, her eyes too wide, her lips curled into a smile that didn't belong on a human being. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I couldn't even blink. I just stood there, trapped in that room, paralyzed by the sheer unnaturalness of what I was seeing. Then, just as quickly as she appeared, she was gone. But I knew she was still there, watching. The whispers started up again, this time louder. They were everywhere. In my head, in the walls, in the air I breathed. The following night, I couldn't sleep. It was as though the house itself was alive, breathing in rhythm with my panic. I had to leave. I had to go back to the hospital. Maybe, just maybe, if I returned to the place where it all started, I could end this nightmare. I drove there alone. It was the dead of night, and the familiar gates loomed in the distance, like the mouth of some hungry beast waiting to swallow me whole. The fog had rolled in thick, and everything was shrouded in this otherworldly mist that seemed to bend and pulse with its own life. When I got out of the car, the air felt different, heavier. The whispers returned, so close now that I could almost feel the words in my ears. I felt a hand brush against my shoulder, but when I turned, nothing was there. The doors of the hospital were still open. No creak of hinges, just an inviting, dark void that seemed to beckon me inside. I entered, the floor cold beneath my shoes, my heartbeat quickening with every step. I knew it was waiting for me. I walked through the halls of the hospital, the same twisted hallways I had wandered before, but this time they seemed even more alive, more sinister. It was as if the building itself had been waiting for my return, and now it had me. The walls whispered my name in 1,000 voices, all overlapping, all sounding so eerily familiar. I stumbled into the room where I had first found the bloodstains. It was even worse now. There was more blood, more darkness. The shadows seemed to grow with every breath I took, and then I heard it, the sound of breathing, heavy, labored, like something was waiting for me in the shadows. I turned to face it, and that's when I saw the reflection in the glass, my reflection. But it wasn't me, it was the woman, her face now frozen into a horrible mockery of my own. "You'll never leave," she whispered, and the walls began to close in around me. I ran, but every door I opened led me back to the same room. I was stuck, trapped. Hours, or maybe days passed. Time lost all meaning. The air was thick with something heavy and dark, something ancient. The whispers never stopped, and I couldn't escape them. They were in the walls, in my head, in the very air I breathed. I didn't care anymore. I had lost all sense of myself. I was becoming one of them, a part of the hospital, a piece of its twisted, decayed history. The woman smiled at me one last time, her grin stretching wider than any human should. And then, the whispers stopped. The doors opened. I thought I had escaped. I thought I had survived, but the whispers never stopped. They followed me home, creeping through the walls, watching me from the mirrors. My reflection isn't mine anymore. It smiles when I don't. It moves when I stand still. The hospital never let me go, because it wasn't just a building, it was alive. And now, it feels like it's coming inside me. I don't know what to do, or how to react in this situation. Well, that was pretty much it. I hope you liked the story till then. Bye-bye.